guys, welcome to Better Bachelor. My name is Joker with a face for radio and a voice for print. The viral debate, it's been happening with content creators like Ben Shapiro and Matt Walsh, but then the left gets involved, and then before you know it, everybody's arguing about this stuff. It usually happens when a video from Andrew Tate or some other much more popular content creator than myself decides it gets out there, and then everybody has to argue about it. But the viral debate does still stand. Is high body count the fault of men or women? Now, overwhelmingly, I say it is women, and I will explain why in a moment. But I'm going to reference this screenshot here, and this is how I think a lot of women feel about it. So a woman, let's see who, a dude posted this first, I think. It says, women control who gets sex and men control who gets relationships. It's up to the women. And that's the same thing we've decided, or we've said for a long time. Women decide what happens in the bedroom. Men decide what happens when it comes to, relationships and marriage, because the guy has to ask, or he can just say no, the same way that women can say yes or no to the bedroom, because men rarely say no to the bedroom. And a woman responds, men try to get women to sleep with them, then blame them for saying yes with laughing emojis. And the truth of that is correct. And we're going to explain why here in a moment. And this guy responds, it's not too hard to understand. Women should keep their legs closed. Men have always tried to get free sex. It's innate. That's why women should protect their virtue, and men should be careful not to give promiscuous women a wedding ring. Now, if you agree with that, you're probably a very big fan of Undead Chronic. And then she takes this whole conversation, bundles it up, and she says, red pill men complain that women can divorce them and take half their property, but they're totally okay with a man taking a woman's purity, according to them, one of her most important values, and then blaming her for letting him. Well, I'm going to explain this in multiple ways, actually, and you may find yourself actually agreeing with her than disagreeing with her. Let me explain. What do you call it when a man takes a woman's purity? We call that the old snuggle struggle. Men can do 10, 20 years in jail for taking that part of a woman that has not been given to them. In many cases today, women give it to them, then regret giving it to the men, and then take away that permission, and the men still get in trouble for that stuff, right? So it's not something that men can take. It has to be given willingly. And so to get it willingly, what do men do? Men lie. Men lie a lot about it. Do you blame that on the liar, or do you blame that on the woman that was fooled? Now, if you say, well, I blame it on the liar, that is a fair assessment. But guys do, look, it goes back to movies from the 50s and the 60s, where you see men, if you go back and I don't think it was Grease. Maybe it was Grease, but it was a movie, I want to say from the 60s or 70s. I remember watching it. It was something that had a very old movie star in it, something like, I don't know, one of Sylvester Stallone's very first movies. And he was trying to talk a woman into getting it on, and if she didn't, he wasn't going to date her anymore. And he pressured her, and she did, and then she got pregnant. Is that the fault of the dude or the woman? Well, you can say both, really. It's his fault for pressuring her. It's her fault for giving in. But in a case like that, you'd probably say it's the dude. He should not be pressuring her to do that. And I would agree with you. But it's not like this is all of a sudden a new thing. I'm pretty sure guys have been pressuring women to sleep with them for a very, very long time. So what's the difference today? The difference today is women won't take their share of the accountability for doing it. And that's where the big problem lies, is that women have been told it's not your fault. Or if you want to go get it. And if you give it up, it's not your fault. You were lied to. You were coerced. You were convinced. The way I can relate this is my father, who has, before he passed away, he had dementia and Parkinson's. And a couple of years before he died, he was on the computer. They got an email that said, and I had told my parents this multiple times, watch out for phishing scams. This is what it looks like. Someone will say something's wrong with your computer or the bank or whatever, and click this link. And my father, without my mother's knowledge, because she's much sharper on this stuff because she's 10 years younger, and I've spent many years teaching her the ways of the computer because she has interest in them, and my father did not. She knew enough not to fall for this stuff. But my father, who either didn't pay attention when I said things or because his mental faculties were slipping some because of his illness, he clicked it. And before you know it, they were scammed out of a few $100s, and they had to cancel the credit card. And I had to wipe their hard drive because the scammers had put some software on there I couldn't get off. I had to wipe their hard drive and back up their photos, and I did all this work to fix it for them. In a case like that, would you say, well, it's your mentally challenged father because of his illness's fault? Or would you say it's the scammer's fault? It's definitely the scammers. But you can't stop the scammers from scamming, can we now? We try. But how do you stop the scammers? You really can't. So what do you do instead? You educate everybody to watch out for the scammers so you don't get scammed. Linus Tech Tips, who is a computer guy with, 10 million followers here on YouTube, he got caught on a link in a scam. So even those that are very, very well aware of what they're doing can make mistakes. But if you can't stop the scammers, you have to teach people what's going on, and then hopefully they make the right decisions. So how does this relate to men trying to sleep with women and women sleeping with men? Men are going to try to sleep with women. That's what they do. That's what they've always tried to do. I remember being an 18 to 25-year-old male, and a lot of guys in that, a lot of my buddies, a lot of my thoughts were completely focused on sleeping and dating women. That's all it was about. When you're 16, you wanted to get your driver's license ASAP. Get off the permit, get your driver's license. Why? So you could go out with your friends and you could pick up your girlfriend, take her in the back seat of the car, and get as far as you could. That's just the way life was back in the 1980s. That's the way it was. It's been universal. And you know what? Many of the women and girls that were in high school that we were dating got in that back seat, and a lot of them said no. A lot of them said they weren't comfortable. Now, we weren't jerks. We didn't threaten the relationship. We didn't say, oh, well, if you don't do this, I'm breaking up. Because we are not monsters. Some guys are monsters, and some guys would push that. But the majority of guys and my friends, and I would say probably 95% of most dudes would not do that. We'd just be like, oh, man, come on, baby. It's saying what you can say to change your mind. And if she said no, the answer was no. And it didn't happen. Now, us guys wanted it to happen, but it didn't. Why? Because she put the kibosh on it. She knew, or maybe she thought she was, being scammed. She was saying, you know what, we've only been dating for a few months. Maybe if we've been dating 6 months or a year, maybe I can see you're a little bit more serious about us and you're not just messing with me. Girls would give you that answer. And what happened? Guys kept it in their pants until they got home, and then they furiously settled the blue ball situation before they went to bed. That's just the way life was in the 80s and 90s. But smash cut to today. Women now have been told you can sleep with as many men as you want, and you can do whatever you want, and you can get your body count as high as you want. And then when they're told that men don't want that, they're confused because they think, well, yeah, but men are the ones that are doing this to us. It's kind of like all the pirates, all the bad guys breaking into a bank, and the good guys show up and say, I don't want to put my money in this bank. This bank is not secure. I'm not going to put my money here. And that's like the bank tellers looking at the good guys, the bankers, the investors, the local dentist, whoever, the everyday normal guys, the good citizens of society, saying, yeah, but it's men that robbed the bank. Why would you rob the bank but then also want to put your money in the bank? And here's the kicker. It's not the same men. It's not the same men that are doing this. The bank robbers aren't putting their money in the bank. They're taking your money out of the bank. And the good guys show up wanting to put their money in the bank, but they see the bank is vulnerable and they don't want to put their money in the bank. And then the bankers are like, but it's men that is doing this. Well, this is the same thing that women are doing right now. You've got these very attractive, handsome, charismatic, maybe muscular, tall, whatever men. They're coming in and they're robbing women's purity, if we'll call it that. They're coming in and convincing these women, I want to take this from you. And they get it. And then they bounce, or they leave her as a single mom, or they walk away. And then when the average everyday guy comes around and says, I would like to date you, I would like to be with you, and the woman says, well, I have a count in the 30s or the 40s or the 50s, guys say, I do not want any of that because your bank is not secure. You do not have a good enough lock on the entry to your pureness or your purity. And then women are furious, like this lady here, saying, but it's men that took this from us. Men are not this homogenized, unified glob of individuals. There are lots of men with lots of different opportunities and lots of abilities. And these women are giving themselves to guys that are smooth with the tongue and maybe look good and maybe are socially desirable. And the guys that the average guy that used to find an average woman would have found a woman that didn't have those type of opportunities. And he said, you know what? No one's even tried to come and rob your bank. You know, you're not gorgeous. You're not highly desirable by all men, but you're desirable to a few men, and maybe they just haven't found you yet. But I found you. And either maybe you repelled the three robbers that came in to steal your purity, and I think you did a good job with that, or maybe not so many guys were looking for it, but I'd like it. I'm willing to purchase it. I'm willing to invest in it. I'm willing to give to it. And that woman would say, you know something? No one else is coming to put money in the bank. I'm not giving money out of my bank. I've got a pretty safe bank. And the men said, I will invest in that. But the problem today with the way society is geared up is women have been told, throw your doors open. Let anybody that wants to come in and steal your purity to take it. But then when it comes to marriage, the men that want to get married, the men that haven't had the opportunity to even get to the bank yet, I hope this analogy you're following along with, but I want to try to put it in a monetary thing so maybe more people can understand this. The men that show up that want to invest in the bank sees everybody else has been in the bank, out of the bank, you know, money flying all over the place. They say, I don't want, this is a bad risk. I'm afraid that someone else, after I've invested in your bank, I'm afraid someone else is going to come and let them into the bank. This is a bad investment because there's been too many people already in the bank. I want Fort Knox. I want Fort Knox. And this is what's happening. And so when it comes down to it, I'll tell you one more story from my high school years. Let me think of a couple of good fake names here. Okay, I got it. There was a girl, her name was Kristen. I was in school with Kristen from 4th grade to high school senior year. And that was across a couple schools. So the way our schools were designed is like elementary school was one location. And then if you lived in a certain area, your middle school would be over here. But if you're on the outskirts, your middle school might be over there. And then by the time you graduated, we had 2 big high schools. And I happened to be with this gal from, 4th grade through senior year, something like that. Middle school, 4, 5, 6. No, middle school was 6, 7, 8. 6, 7, 8. Yeah, middle school, 6, 7, 8. And then high school, 9, 10, whatever it is, 11, 12th grade. It's been a little while since I thought about school, I'll be honest with you. But anyway, I knew her for like 8 years. So I knew her from the age of 12 until 18. This girl looked like if you took Sybil Shepherd and, I don't know. She looked very similar to like Sybil Shepherd. Very pretty blonde, very, very popular. All the boys loved them some Kristen. And as she aged, she developed very nicely. And us young guys were really into Kristen. Kristen was a witch with a different first letter. She was cold. She was aloof. She would very rarely go out on dates with guys. And when she did, they were usually the good-looking, popular guys. But here's the trick. for as long. She would date a good-looking, popular guy for a few months, and then they'd break up time after time after time. And we're in the football locker room, and they'd be like, "Hey, what happened, man?" And he's like, it's just, I don't know, man. It wasn't going to happen. I didn't feel it, whatever. But turns out it was because those guys put the moves on Kristen, and Kristen said, no, it's not going to happen until she's married. And guys called her cold, and they called her aloof, and they called her names, and they gave her a hard time about it because everybody wanted to be with Kristen. Well, smash cut to, I went back, I don't remember now. I think it was would it be my 20th? I went to my 10 or 15 year high school reunion. I happened to be up near that area. And I said, you know what? They've got this event. I'll drive over and see what's going on. Met up with a couple of old buddies of mine, saw some friends I used to play Dungeons and Dragons with. It was a good time. And there was Kristen. Kristen was married to a very tall, very good looking, very successful doctor. Kristen waited. I mean, as far as we know, because you talk around, you ask around, there's some people that lived in town, and Kristen never left town. She stayed there all her life. She ended up marrying some guy from the other opposing high school that none of us really knew very well. And apparently she saved herself for marriage. And who did she save herself for? The really good looking, tall, attractive guy that had a lot of money. He was a doctor, attorney, something or other. I don't remember exactly what. But everybody was pretty much like, yeah, she's pretty successful. Big old rock on her finger, and she had, 2-3 kids. What's the moral of the story? She kept that bank locked tight like Fort Knox. And when she found the right guy that was willing to marry her and stay by her side, she snagged herself a winner. Why? Because she was smart and she was funny, and her purity was locked down under lock and key like Fort Knox until she gave it to one man. And that one man said, this is the most valuable bank in existence, because, man, everybody was trying to rob this baby and nobody got in. And that's where I'm going to invest my money. She won. So what's the difference between the Kristens of today and the Kristens of yesteryear? The Kristens of today, not only can they have the one doctor, lawyer, tall, dark, handsome, they can have all of them. And they decided, hey, women's empowerment has said that I can have all of them, and it's okay if I have all of them. And so they have all of them. And so none of those guys have to invest in the bank. They just take from the bank. They take from the Purity Bank. And then all the men that are kind of huddled around saying, man, I would do anything to have a bank like that is beautiful. And, well, they just keep seeing it get robbed from constantly. And eventually those men say, I'm not going to invest in that bank anymore. The men that are robbing the bank are not the same ones that are investing in the bank. That's the difference. And have those couple of investors that want to invest in a really good bank, have they taken stuff from smaller banks? Maybe. Probably. But you can't change that mindset about a man. It's just the easiest way that I can explain it to maybe people that don't understand what's going on, is you have to think of it as a bank and a vault, and how many keys do people get to that? So yes, men will rob banks if there is low security and it's easy to walk into and easy to walk out of. I think many of you would say, if there was a building that just had money in it and you could show up and walk in with a bare amount of effort and just grab a bunch of money and walk out, who wouldn't do that? Men. And sometimes you walk out and you have an STI, or sometimes you walk out and you got a kid out of the deal. But it's too hard. It's very tempting for men to walk into that bank and just grab something for free. And then when they have an extremely hard time getting into the bank, whatever's in that bank's very very valuable, because they keep it under very tight lock and key. Well, men want to own what's in that bank, because what's given out to everybody is not valuable anymore. So when it comes down to the overall debate, the body count fault is always women's. There are going to be men throughout history that will try to steal things that are valuable. And if you let them, you can't blame it on the thief. I mean, you can say he's a bad guy for being a thief. We all agree we shouldn't have thieves in society, but we do. And so all you can do is make a more secure facility. There's a reason why, whether it's Area 52 or Fort Knox or whatever, you don't hear about anybody getting into those places. They're guarded up tight. But you see an Apple store in Baltimore or wherever it was, Chicago, give it a different weekend, they get their windows smashed in and everybody's grabbing stuff and getting gone. Why? No security, just people's goodwill to keep them from doing this. And when the goodwill or the sense of community or believing in society's rules breaks down, they just go in, they rob the place blind. Only then did the cops show up and actually try to stop them. What's the difference between that Apple store and Fort Knox? That Apple store has phones that display phones that get stolen, and Apple can just lock them and they're out, maybe $10,000. But in Fort Knox, there's probably billions of dollars of gold. And maybe Fort Knox is not a thing anymore, but I use that as a reference because most people understand that thing. Well, there's not much value in an iPhone. There's a ton of value in Fort Knox, and that's the difference. Thieves will always exist, but if you guard your bank very tightly and you say what's in there is so valuable, you really only want to give that to one person ever, that's where it has value. It's not the fault of the robbers wanting to rob, because everybody will rob given the right circumstances, or most everybody would. Good people won't, but that's why we will lock things up. And I know you guys are going to put this analogy, but a master lock versus a master key, right? A master lock that keeps everybody out is a valuable lock. A master key that can open everything. And that's the difference between the men and women thing. Because everybody wants to rob from a bank, right? But very few people want to rob from a bank robber. I know I'm getting really weird with this analogy, but my point is it's very hard for men to want a bunch of women to want him. So a guy that has a bunch of women wanting him, that's his value. Maybe here's an analogy. I know I'm going crazy with these analogies, but it's kind of fun. I like brain exercises that challenge me. You have to be really good to want to steal from a bank robber. If instead of going after the bank, if a bank robber can steal from other bank robbers, that's a really good robber, right? That's a guy that's really good. Well, that's how men are. A man that can get a lot of women to be with him, he's got the value, because that's tough. A woman to get a lot of men to go to her is very easy. It's a very interesting thing that I think a lot of people don't understand. And women and feminism and society, because I did a search on this, and all the articles that came up from The Atlantic and HuffPo and all these other places, why body count doesn't matter, and men that really want this are weak and insecure. I got a video here I'm going to play. Let's see, do I want to play this in video in this one or the next one? I'm going to play this video. I have a video here I'm going to play. I'll play it in the next one because it actually relates to that as well. That's the deal, guys. I hope you like my analogy. I hope it makes sense. Maybe if you can expand on it or explain it a little bit better down below, please do. But I want a way that I can try to explain this to people that don't understand body count and how men think. I want a way to explain it to where you can explain it to somebody who's 5 and they go, okay, I see what you're saying now. I don't know. Let me know what you think. I'll leave it there. I'll see you in the next one. I'll have another one out for you shortly.